says this, okay, if you want the stuff I've made for you and you don't want me, fine. Take it. But this is the problem. Once God releases his grip, and once we run away, that's it. That's it. It's done. There is no knowledge of God left over at that point in time. There just simply isn't. You know, you could look at the Bible and you can read the words there, but you will not understand it if you're mired in your own rebellion. You can look at anything in this world. You can look at Jesus and you can find out everything to know about Jesus, but you will not fully understand it if you're mired in your own rebellion. This is my major point with this, and this is something that's very important for us to learn if we want to have the breath of God in our lives. If I have sin in my life, I cannot have God's breath. If there is sin in my life, I cannot have God's breath in my life. I phrased it this way on your note sheet. As long as we have sin, we have no hope of connection with God. As long as we have sin, we have no hope of connection with God. Time to go to stop number 2 on our journey. Romans 3. Beginning in verse 21. We read these words. But, I love some of the buts you find in the Bible. Chapter 1 and 2 is just all terrible stuff. I mean, God has given us over. He has released us. There is no hope of knowing God. We are mired in our sin. He gave us the knowledge of Him and we rejected it. And then you look in chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. There's no one righteous, not even one. It's terrible, it's horrible, it's no good, it's very bad. Verse 21, but, take a breath. But, now, a righteousness from God, apart from law, has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness from God comes through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There's no difference, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God and are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Jesus. God presented Him as a sacrifice of atonement through faith in His blood. He did this to demonstrate His justice, because in His forbearance He left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did it to demonstrate His justice at the present time, so as to be just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. If you are not fully familiar with this passage, I imagine some of that was difficult for you to understand because it's honestly difficult to read properly. But here it goes. I'm going to walk you through it quickly to give you some quick explanations. Verse 21, a righteousness from God apart from the law has been made known. You don't have to obey God's law to be righteous. Did you know that? You don't need to obey God's law to be righteous. Okay, tell me more. To which the law and the prophets testify. The whole Old Testament told us this was coming. This righteousness from God comes through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There's no difference. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God and are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. Justified means made righteous. Righteous means you always do the right thing. In other words, God says by having faith in Jesus, you are made righteous, which means as far as God's concerned, every decision you ever made was the right one. As far as God's concerned, every action you've ever done is the right one. Do you know why? Well, it's because of this next piece. God presented Jesus as a sacrifice of atonement. Atonement is a big Bible word that means two things. Thing number one, it means God has taken all of your sin, He's wrapped it up, and He's cast it away. Thrown it away. During the Day of Atonement, what they would do is they would do two sacrifices. One sacrifice would be a sacrifice where they took two goats. One goat they would kill. They would slit its throat, empty its blood, and they would use that blood to anoint the altar inside the temple and those kinds of things. But the other goats, they would let live. the priest would lay his hands on the goat and he would pronounce over the goat all the sins of the people of Israel. And then they would take someone and they would drag the goat miles away from town and then let it go. Hopefully some animal would eat it out there. Some lion or something would get it. And it would never come back. That was called the scapegoat. That's where the term comes from. That's from the Day of Atonement. Okay? The Day of Atonement means these two things. It means, number one, your sin has been taken away and your guilt has been paid for. Someone else has died. That other lamb had died. It took two lambs, one Jesus. God presented him as a sacrifice of atonement, which does two things. All of your bad stuff is taken away, buried in a grave with Jesus, and when he comes back out, he leaves your sin in there. And number two, all of your guilt is paid for by his death on the cross. That means, in God's eyes, when he looks at you, you have never made a mistake. You've never done anything wrong. Why? Because everything you did that was wrong is gone. And any guilt you might have had left over has been paid for. Righteousness apart from the law has been made known. Wow. I'll just explain to you the last couple pieces here. He did it to demonstrate his justice, because in his forbearance he left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. That means God didn't punish the sins fully in the Old Testament. And so he had to do justice. And so he paid for the sins fully through Jesus. And then finally, so as to be just and the one who justifies. God has to be the one who is righteous and makes other people righteous. And in order to do that, he had to have someone pay the penalty.